Abbie. Hello.
Hi, Helen.
It is so good to see you. Welcome.
It's very nice to see you.
Welcome to 5 Curly Career Questions. So just as a bit of background, you are the country director for the Nature Conservancy. And in terms of your backstory, I suppose, we met on day 3 of our arrival in New Zealand, and we've been friends ever since. You have always, I think since a young age, been interested in the environment and sustainability. But your sort of career path, I guess, started out, I think you were a solicitor originally and moved into regulatory after that. And then corporate and social responsibility, sustainability. You have sat on and do sit on a number of boards. You presented to the United Nations, and you were an award winner in 2019 for the New Zealand Women of Influence. That's pretty inspiring. Welcome.
Sounds better than it is.
Sounds very impressive. Okay, we strip out all of that, and you've got 5 curly career questions, the same as everybody else. Okay, so your first one. Tell me about a time when you experienced a career transition or a time when you felt stuck.
I've done quite a few career transitions, but probably the most significant was the transition from working in kind of corporate commercial, doing regulatory policy work and moving into corporate responsibility. As you said at the beginning, I've always been really interested in the environment. I kind of had a epiphany moment when I realized that that's what I wanted to be doing for my kind of work. And so was having to think about making the transition. And the way I did that was in part by leaving the UK and moving to New Zealand, going from a country where you have to be a deep specialist to a country where you can be a generalist, and then really thinking about using networks and I had multiple strategies I was using to make that transition. So it was that was my biggest, I think, but really important one for me.
Yeah, super important to make that shift into something that you really, really love and really want to be involved in. Cool. Okay, so we've had discussions about this many times, but our priorities change as we grow up, as our careers progress, right? So what one way do you think your priorities have changed?
I'm definitely much less oriented towards progression, like kind of moving up the career ladder, getting more senior. And now I think I'm much more focused on being on missions. So I don't think of myself so much as having a career anymore, but just a series of like big missions and going after, like trying to make material change on the things which really matter to me. So sustainability, climate change, and now at the Nature Conservancy here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, on nature.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, third question. What are a couple of key resources, I guess, or pieces of advice that you have had along the way that you can share?
2 that matter to me. One around being a woman in the workplace is the idea that just working really hard and keeping your nose clean and doing a good job is not enough. There's a whole bunch of other things you have to do to be seen to be successful and succeed. So I think that stuck with me, and I talk a lot to young women about that. And the second is, I'm trying to think what the second is. Actually, the second is, and it's really relevant given I'm talking to you, is get help. Like every time, I think I was very lucky to meet able coaches quite early on in my career, and I've had several now. And that ability to work with someone who can help you talk to yourself about what you're stuck on, what you might need to do differently, but also sometimes it helps you identify what you don't know. And so I got advice quite early on about getting a coach and getting mentors, and I actually did something about it, which many people don't, and I have never regretted that. It's just been one of the, it's been a consistent part of how I've rolled.
That's really cool. That's really two pieces of really, really great advice. Yeah, and I think, I remember someone saying to me once about, well, you don't know what you don't know. And I was beating myself up about the fact that I couldn't do something or didn't know something. And it was that epiphany moment when I was like, okay, and I can ask for help. Okay, cool. All right. So I hate, loathe, detest coriander, as you well know. And thinking about these questions, I was thinking, what in a professional setting would be someone's coriander equivalent, like that thing that you hate, loathe, and detest? So, Abbie, in a work context, what is your coriander?
I feel slightly ashamed to admit this. I've just done the Enneagram test, and I think I've come out as an Enneagram 7. And one of our things is we really hate limitations. And when I read it, I went, oh, yes, that's me. And I thought I knew myself pretty well. And I'm like, no, I love autonomy. I love agency. I love just being able to go after something, and limitations in the workplace, like feeling constrained and boxed in, is like total coriander. Is kryptonite to me. Yeah.
And thank you. And for anyone that doesn't know, can you just quickly say what the Enneagram is?
Oh, yeah. So Enneagram is one of those sort of personality profiles. It's a bit like Myers-Briggs or Belbin or DISC, or the Strengths Finder. So just a really nice way into kind of learning more about yourself, but also learning about others and how to work really well together. So I love those things.
Cool.
That's another piece of advice, people. Those personality profiles, they're not always right, but it's such a good invitation to get to know yourself.
And you'll work out what your coriander is as well. So, as you know, in the Māori culture, there is a concept of a koha, a gift. So, using that a little bit loosely, I guess, what koha or gift would you give to someone going through a career transition at the moment, or maybe just feeling a bit stuck?
Yeah, I think the thing I consistently come back to with people, because often when you're alongside people who are transitioning, they're a bit younger, is to say there's nothing to be got wrong here. Like, I think we get very, we take our careers seriously, rightly, but actually giving yourself the opportunity to play and be a bit light and flexible and experiment with some things is a really useful thing to do. And I think it always stands you in good stead for later, because the more experiences you have, the more adaptive and flexible you can be. So I think that's my gift. Try not to get too stuck in getting it right or wrong, but actually just trying and playing is really helpful.
Cool. Thank you, Abbie. So those are the end of your 5 curly career questions, but there is a mystery question for you, which was given to me, not necessarily for you, but given to me by a previous guest. And the whole mystery question thing is a concept that I've borrowed from Stephen Bartlett. So, your question: looking back at your career, which moment or turning point had the most influence on your purpose?
I think it was for me, it was when I was living in the UK, and I met someone who was doing for a job kind of ethical work, and he talked about all of that sort of thing, and it really made me reflect and kind of reconnect with that part of me that had been very into wanting to protect the environment when I was young. So that was a really seminal moment, and that was the moment where I went, actually, I want more of that in my life. And is it possible to do a job where I'm trying to serve the things which I love, like nature and the environment? So I think that was the catalytic moment for me in that first transition that we talked about right at the beginning.
There was a second part to that question, which I didn't say, but I think you just answered it anyway, which was, how has that shaped how you serve others today? You just answered that.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Yeah, I think the interesting thing is too that even when you're working on trying to do neat stuff on climate change or sustainability, it's still always about people. And so, I strive, and frequently miss, but I strive to be my definition of a good leader, because I think that's really important. You kind of got to model the way you want to be in the world, and you want others to be in the world. even when you're working on things that feel like they're not necessarily human problems.
Thank you. Super inspiring answers and suggestions and advice.
Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome. All right. That was your 5 curly career questions. You were going to leave a question for another guest, so thank you.
Can I say what my question is now to you, Helen, or do you have to keep it silent and secret?
I have to keep it secret, yes.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
Give it to me after.
Behind the scenes.
Okay.
Thank you for having me,
Abbie.
Helen. This was such a treat.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Speak soon.
All right.